Talk Show. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we kick off our retrospective dedicated to the Exorcist series with this, our own episode 100. That is right, our 100th episode of the Castle of Horror podcast, formerly known as the Castle Dracula podcast, and we are talking about William Friedkin's original The Exorcist. Now, bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about from the perspective of horror fans who have. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, screenwriter of the new 3DS game TMNT, based on the movie. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and co-creator of the comics Psycom from Tokyopop and Clockworks from Humanoids. Say hello.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man from Monsterverse Comics. Say hello, Drew.
Hello. Whoa.
Hello, welcome back. And also in Austin, special guest Jamie Barr is a musician, pinup model, educator, and the lead vocalist and upright bassist for Austin's premier all-female rock and roll band, Danger Cakes. Their new album, titled Quarter Life Crisis, will be released in October 2014. You can find info at dangercakes.net. Say hello, Miss Jamie.
Hello.
Hello, and welcome back. And finally, as always, joining us from Denver, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman. Say hello.
Howdy.
Hey. All right. According to Wikipedia, there's so much I could even read from the Wikipedia, but just to give us a very high-level thing so we can get into this, The Exorcist is a 1973 American supernatural horror film directed by William Friedkin and adapted from the novel by William Peter Blatty. The book was inspired by the 1949 exorcism case of Roland Doe, a true case, or so they say. The film features Linda Blair, Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, Jason Miller, Lee J. Cobb, and in voice only, Mercedes McCambridge. It is one of a cycle of demonic child films produced from the late 60s to the mid-70s, including Rosemary's Baby and The Omen. The film has had a significant influence on popular culture. It was named the scariest film of all time, and that's worth debating, by Entertainment Weekly and Movies.com, and by viewers of AMC in 2006. It was number 3 on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments. And in 2010, the Library of Congress selected the film The Exorcist to be preserved as part of its National Film Registry. In 2003, it was placed at number 2 in Channel 4's 100 Greatest Scary Moments in the United Kingdom. So all across the English-speaking world, this is considered one of the finest horror movies ever made. So let's get right into first impressions, and I'll put Jamie and Drew together. So let's do Tony, Jamie, Drew, Julia, and then I'll go Tony. And let's keep these fairly short because we got so much to talk about. And then when we wrap up, we'll come around again and you know what? I'm not going to stop you. If you want to explain what you feel like on your 100th episode, that's cool too. So, all right, Tony, first impressions, The Exorcist.
Oh, this is, again, it's like back with Jaws, one of the best movies as well as being a horror movie. It's definitely more horrific than Jaws. But, oh, man, it's just a tour de force, great cinematography, just all-around good stuff. I mean, this is another one I think we could spend at least 3 episodes talking about it and still not cover everything. And I watched, both Blu-rays. I think I watched almost everything that was on the 2 Blu-ray set because I just had to.
Wow.
I mean, it's so good.
Did you pick this up? Or did you find it somewhere? Or
I meant to pick it up freelancing. That's actually when I get a new job or some more freelance. I think it's one of the ones I'm picking up post-haste. But I borrowed it this time and was sad that I don't actually own it because it's amazing. It looks great, and it is packed to the gills. The Blu-ray is packed to the gills.
Very cool. All right. Excellent, Tony. Jamie, welcome back, first of all, once again. And
thank you. Good to be back.
I'm dying to know about your association with The Exorcist and what your first impressions on seeing it. Have you seen it before? All that good stuff.
Well, let's see. I remember seeing the first time on Halloween when I was a kid. And my parents sending me out of the room multiple times throughout the movie to the point where I didn't really understand what was going on. I just knew this girl had the devil in her. That's all I knew, and that she was throwing up everywhere. And I was like, "Oh my God!" But that was my very first time seeing it, so it didn't really scare me as much as it grossed me out. And then I saw it in the theaters when they had the reboot and the director's cut, and that was at a period in time where I was, I was in high school. I started kind of questioning my own personal faith, and I was raised Catholic, and saw this movie, and that scene where she goes down the crab walk down the stairs gave me nightmares for weeks. And then we watched it. I've probably only seen this movie a handful of times. We watched it the other night. I couldn't stay awake. I don't even know why. It just for some reason didn't have the scare factor like it did when I was a kid. And I know this movie holds up well on a cinematic end, but I felt like a lot of it just almost after a while seemed, I don't want to say contrived, but, because obviously it is, but it just, it just wasn't as scary as everybody made it out to seem. And, even though, and that's how I remembered it too. So it was kind of a little sad, like when you, almost like finding out that Santa doesn't exist, like when something that you knew scared you so much at some point, and you see it and you're like, really? So that's my take.
That's a wonderful response. There's a lot to unpack in there, because I think this movie does have to grapple with its reputation as something or other like the finest horror movie ever made, and I don't know. There's a lot of things grappling for that, but it's pretty darn strong. Okay, Mr. Drew. And by the way, when the heck does she crab walk? That's like in the...
That is in the re-released version.
Re-release, yeah. It was filmed for the original, but they didn't include it in the original.
I knew that happened.
It is really creepy.
It's scary. And then she opens her mouth and blood comes out, and it's just... She's like...
I do remember it being creepy. This time we watched the original theatrical version, so we were saying.
Oh, you missed out.
Okay, let's see, Drew. First impressions. The Exorcist.
Okay, first off, I don't think this movie is the scariest movie of all time. I don't even think it's as scary as Jaws. There's nothing in this movie that is as scary as the opening sequence as Jaws. This movie, we talked last week about the difference between a thriller and a horror film. This movie, to me, despite how shocking it is, and I will concede that it's an extremely shocking movie, there is probably nothing in mainstream cinema as shocking as this movie is when it first came out. It is very well acted. It is very well made. But it does not terrify. I was raised Protestant, and what this movie has over me is a sort of romanticism of Catholicism, the same feeling I get from watching a lot of Hammer vampire movies, as this sort of ritualized confrontation with evil. And that is what I really love about this movie. This movie, to me, oddly, is kind of romantic because there's a dance to it, the dance of good versus evil. And I love this movie a lot, but I don't think it's scary. And I don't even think it's as scary as... I think The Bride of Frankenstein, which is an ancient movie compared to this, is scarier than this movie. This is a thrilling movie to me. It's exciting to watch, well acted, well made. Scariest movie of all time? Not hardly.
Right. Very good. Okay, excellent. And Julia, where do you land on this movie as scary? Do you think it deserves that reputation? And also, and in that context, what are your first impressions?
Well, I absolutely think it's the scariest movie ever made. That's why I keep saying that, and I'm just heartbroken that you guys don't think it's scary. It's terrible. No, I remember watching it in college because my friend Ann and I challenged each other to watch it, and so we rented it at the Vulcan Video, and we came over to my house, my apartment, and she had a boyfriend at the time who had seen it before, but he wasn't coming over, but he was working. But he kept calling us while we were watching the movie and be like, "What part are you on?" And we would tell him, and he'd go, "Oh my gosh, it gets so much scarier than that." It's like, that's not even bad. Like, there's nothing. And then we see the part that her head spins around, and we're like, "Okay, we've seen the scariest part. We know." And it's like, "No, it gets worse." So I think that added to the suspense. It's like, "Oh my God, what else is going to happen?" So I just thought it was terrifying. I still think it's terrifying, although I didn't remember it taking as long as it does to kind of get to the possession part of it. You know, it seems like it takes a while, but once that's going on, I mean, all the stuff with the girl and the demon just terrifies me. I mean, I have a 12-year-old, number one, and two, I grew up Catholic. I believe very strongly in not necessarily Satan, but like in evil spirits that could, I suppose, theoretically possess someone, and they say that this is a true story about a boy. So, to me, that is what makes it so scary, is the idea that this could happen. If you don't believe it can happen, it's not going to be scary to you. But if it's something that you believe is possible, then it's horrifying, and especially if you have a kid. So yeah, to me, it is the scariest movie of all time.
Yeah, I saw the director's cut in the theater, and it had been a long time, and I will have to say, like, the director's cut in the theater with the face appearing on, like, in the kitchen and all of that stuff that wasn't there, and the crab walk, this is definitely, like, I think the theatrical experience definitely helps, because I was like, oh, yeah, I've seen this. And then seeing it in the theater, I definitely got, like, it was way scarier.
Yeah, I concur. I was terrified in the theater, but when I saw it at home this last time, nothing.
We rewatched. What's interesting about kind of putting on my critic goggles and looking at this movie, which we talked a little bit about last week, the critical eye versus the fan eye. The first half of this movie is very conventional haunted house type stuff. It really doesn't give you the bravado, the sort of in-your-faceness that this movie is famous for till kind of later on in the film.
No, I think that's right. Some of the gross stuff that people really like to talk about, the pea soup and all that stuff, that doesn't come towards the end. But to me, a lot of the stuff that is very scary is towards the beginning. But first of all, let me just point out, I don't necessarily think this is the scariest film of all time. I do find it quite scary. I am not a believer in anything in particular, but I completely am willing to become one in the course of a movie, and so I find all of it to be.
Well, the idea of faith and grappling with this movie that way. Like I said, I'm a Protestant, so I look at this from a completely different.
Right.
This is exotic to me. It's exotic.
Exactly. This movie plays up and I mean no disrespect to this, but this movie totally plays up the exoticism of the Catholics. That the Catholics have secret knowledge. Almost to mix the traditions. That they have Kabbalistic knowledge that will be able to be of use against demonic forces. But I gotta say, is it as scary as my favorite horror movie, like The Changeling? Is it as scary as Night of the Living Dead? I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I will say it's so weird. When you consider this film, 1973. So Hammer Studios is still around in 1973. They're doing crazy crackpot Dracula movies with hippies in them, and then all of a sudden, out of this, here comes what I call, and I think this is the right word, but we can argue with it, and I want to talk about it a little bit. Prestige horror. These like big budget horrors that take place in brownstones, and people drive big cars, and really good actors are playing the parts, and that happened, and so Rosemary's Baby had kind of set the tone, and then this movie comes along, and it's exactly like that. It's a modern world, and there's the scary thing, really, at the beginning to me, is when they're putting this little girl who has this mysterious disease into these enormous machines, and it's just so terrifying to stand back and watch your 12-year-old get just battered with radiation and the horrible knocking of these things, and all these people, they're like witch doctors. In other words, Ellen Burstyn, this woman who's faced with her kid suddenly being in really weird shape, literally has no idea what the heck to do, and she just turns her child over to whoever says, "I'll put her in my machine and we'll tell you." And that's what medicine is. So it is scary. I found all of that to be terrifying. Also, the demonic possession, very scary stuff. But the opening stuff with modern medicine, I found to be deeply disturbing.
That they talk a lot in the commentaries and in the interviews about most people leaving or getting really freaked out. Not so much at the horror parts, the traditional horror parts, but when they, when they're first doing all the medical procedures, people are like, "That's it." And in fact, the first one they do,
they stick a big ass needle in her neck.
Yeah, well, that has to go to her brain. Like it's going through the artery.
I've had that, by the way.
Oh yeah.
And
really?
And they actually they said they used that for training purposes because it was the closest. It was done so realistically that. But a lot of people that was it for them. Like people walking out of that part.
I've had a thyroid biopsy, which was a giant needle in my neck. So yeah, that was fun.
I mean, it's hilarious. It's been forever because I've got it playing in the studio right now. They stick her in the neck, and she's awake, and she just kind of winces, and then blood just starts spurting out of her neck. With this arterial rhythm, right? There's a boom, and these huge arcs of crimson, and the doctor just sort of calmly caps it off and puts a line on it, and then it just starts. And it's like, yeah. I mean, not since Eyes Without a Face have medical procedures looked as gruesome as they do here. And this isn't even all that gruesome. This isn't like Face Off or anything. This is just, hey, we're going to give this kid a spinal tap and put them under a giant machine,
Well, the matter-of-factness of it is what makes it creepy, though. If it was like them ripping her face off, like Face Off, it wouldn't be as scary. It's the fact that this is, this movie does a very good job of mixing the mundane with the supernatural, and I think that you talk about. This compared to the more, at the time traditional horror flicks, which were, your Hammer vampire movies, and, AIP was still putting out stuff, and, other drive-in type movies. This does what the best Stephen King books do. It smacks down, a supernatural event in the middle of the real world.
Yes. And in fact, okay, so let's start with the beginning, and then we'll get into the hardcore real world. So very briefly, the movie opens in Iraq, of all places, where an old, we got to figure 80-something priest is puttering around actually not puttering around, he's sort of jauntily going up and down ladders and exploring with this enormous archaeological dig. And he's checking stuff out.
And he's only, by the way, when he's making this film, he's talking about Max von Sydow, he's only 44 years old when he's making this film. They did this amazing 3-hour makeup job on him every day to make him look like that, which I thought was crazy because I'm going to be there not too far in the future.
Right. So this is Max von Sydow as Father Marin, and he's going to be our lead. And were you guys aware of how, Jamie, you'll laugh when I use the word, how young he was when he's actually making this movie? I had no idea.
I was wondering because I was thinking about him in relation to how he looks in Flash Gordon, which is, of course, very different.
Yeah.
Well, also, they talked about how when they met him, they're like, oh wait, because he's played older roles in other films.
Yeah.
And so they meet him, and Friedkin's like, oh wow.
It's like he's an immortal, but he got he got triggered as an immortal when he was like 70.
Well, he now looks because he was in the remake of The Wolfman in a cameo part. He now looks like this for real.
That's right. That's right.
It is in fact, if you look at, I posted on our Facebook page a thing about the makeup job on Max von Sydow, and there's a wonderful side by side. To your point, Drew, image of Max von Sydow and next to Father Merrin. Sydow recently, Father Merrin then, and it is a perfect. The job they did on him when he was 44 makes him look exactly like Max von Sydow at 80. I've seen 1,000 old man jobs, and I got to say, this is the first. I've seen this movie many times, and I never noticed it until now.
Don't Google that though. That sounds like a terrible idea to Google.
Old man job?
Like, don't do that. Whatever you do.
So funny.
I'm not going to.
Well, the way they did it was they applied
dignity, always dignity.
So they applied a lot of stipple to his forehead, whatever that is, eyes and neck, and then his facial skin was then manually stretched as liquid latex was applied. And when the latex dried, then his taut skin was released, causing the film of rubber to corrugate, which just sounds awful to me. I can't imagine that.
I have to say this is talking about the makeup, but R.I.P. Dick Smith.
Oh, I was going to say William Friedkin, I think, is a sadist.
Yeah. Dick Smith.
The things that he made people do in this movie
I know, horrible.
Like, I mean, he shot guns behind, I guess, the Miller, to get a shock, to make sure he got the best look of shock. He actually fired a gun, a loaded gun right behind him. And
when he slapped
the priest.
Yeah.
He slaps a real priest. That's not even just an actor.
Yeah.
The guy's still a priest. He still teaches at Fordham University.
Well,
they talked about shaking, like he's like, I was really shaking. Like, that wasn't an act.
I've been slapped 5 times.
That's that kind of thing. That The Shining is another film that I think is easily as scary as this one to me. But once again, the director there, you hear all the time. He was enormously cool to the actors. This is sort of very common, actually, of this whole sort of Rat Pack set of directors making these big budget horror films, trying to bring them into something that we would recognize, and so they have all these method ideas. Yeah,
and the bedroom that they were doing the exorcism in, that was cooled to like 30 to 40 below zero.
I love that. So that you can see their breath. Anyway, so Max von Sydow is in Iraq. They find they unearth a statue of this old demon who I don't remember if they ever clearly name him, but we're told.
Well, the name is Pazuzu, which they mention in the sequels, but they never say in this one.
Right. It's a demon. We'll call him Pazuzu, and he is. One can only presume. This also is never quite made clear, but because you can take this whole scene as just us meeting Father Merrin in his regular Indiana Jones business before we return to him much later. Or you can take it that they uncover the demon, and then that may somehow or another lead to the possession that happens next.
Well, it releases the demon. That's how I always they accidentally, like an old Universal Mummy movie. They accidentally unleash the monster.
Yeah.
And I have to say this: I love that both of the Exorcists in this movie are in the best Van Helsing tradition. They are men of science as well as men of faith. I love that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's one of the great things about Peter Cushing in the Hammer ones is how even more so than the 30s version. Peter Cushing carries a crucifix around. He carries a number of crucifixes around, and he's always handing them out. And that whole concept of quote unquote manly Christianity, which is definitely what Merrin's going to be all about, and it's what the other priest is about because he's a boxer. So all right, so we have the Iraq thing now. Okay, now we go through this section of the modern world. And where we wind up is in Washington, D.C., in the very well-appointed household, rented household, where California actress Ellen Burstyn is in Washington, D.C., filming some movie or another where, which is about campus protests and what have you. And she's apparently a huge star. She has her staff with her at this house that she's renting in D.C., and, she has what appears to be a butler, and she has a governess. And she's busy, and she has a teenage daughter, or I guess, a 12-year-old daughter, who she seems to have a wonderful relationship with. So her life is fantastic. She has, this extremely well-appointed life, except for that weird things have started happening. They're hearing weird noises in the attic. And then out of nowhere, Reagan, the daughter, just starts acting up. What did you guys think of this presentation, first of all, as just putting us into the world of the 1970s? And I'm wondering also, Jamie, you may not have any memory of the 70s at all. So
No, I don't. I wasn't born.
Right. So this could be a completely unrecognizable world.
I don't think any of them do, Jason, have memory of the 70s.
I was born in 1978, so no.
Yeah,
right.
Drew doesn't have
I was a little baby in the 70s.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't want to just hear myself talk. It looks like the 70s to me.
I don't know. I guess this movie came out the year I was born, 73.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I definitely remember later in the 70s for sure.
Yeah.
So.
The things that pop out to my mind is, of course, the lack of. In many ways their life is completely like ours. It's a completely modern world they're living in. They've got electric lights, but at the same time, the world is way lower tech than ours is. All the medical stuff is, like, as we said, sort of large and brutal and a little experimental. And there's no real means of communicating with one another except for the main telephone. There's no cell phones. There's no texting. There's I think what I love about putting something in an era like this is that it's very modern, and yet everything is very analog. So there's you can have characters have to worry about getting messages to one another and so forth. Anyway, so everything is going great with Reagan, and then the way that she really begins to act out is they have a big party. People are
first before that we hear her just say things that are like little things, she goes and sleeps with her mom in her mom's bed because her bed shaking wakes her up.
Yeah,
stuff like that. So it's just these little things that she says that are weird.
Yeah, but then they have a big cocktail party. And by the way, the line that got used, Clarence Thomas was being, I don't know if you remember this, but when Clarence Thomas was being sworn in by the Supreme Court, one of the things that people said Clarence Thomas had said to his assistants to sexually harass her was, "Hey, look, somebody's left a pubic hair on my drink that doesn't belong to me. I don't know where this came from." And people were like, "Oh, how bizarre." But nobody seemed to acknowledge, and I wish there had been a movie buff in the chambers at the time to go, well, now hang on. That's something that Burke says in The Exorcist. And it was, because here Burke actually says that line in the cocktail party. Burke, the director of the movie, this person that Reagan, the little girl, thinks that maybe her mom is dating, let me tell you, Burke is never dating Ellen Burstyn.
Yeah. Oh, so true.
But yes,
he doesn't have a chance with Ellen Burstyn, not even in Requiem for a Dream.
Not just that, but he's also really gay.
He died after.
He's so yes, but
really, he seems
so
gay. I think he just seems drunk.
He seems quite
British.
You don't get a gay vibe off of Burke?
There was a website for a while. I don't know if it still exists. It was Gay or Eurotrash.
Yeah, I remember that.
I would lean more towards Eurotrash. I don't get a gay vibe per se. I mean, if you can extend gaydar onto a fictional character, but he just kind of makes me think of a comedy drunk character.
I think there's a long way between Dudley Moore and this guy. I mean, I think I know where you're coming from, but fair enough. You know, this is, by the way, what a great party this is, because her party is like on the Georgetown campus, and you've got you know, actresses, you got this crazy, I say somewhat fey movie director, you have the rather swishy priest who plays piano and sings show tunes. And
well, I think he's less.
You have an astronaut,
right?
Yeah.
You got an astronaut.
Well, the guy playing, I mean, the priest playing show tunes, he's just more of a, like, you know, if I wasn't a priest, I would totally be a, you know, a piano bar guy.
Yes.
You know,
No,
just like
fantastic.
he's more of you know, he wanted to be a musician and be doing this all the time, but the priesthood was his calling for whatever reason. So
I love that character too. I mean, the really great thing is, you know, we come to, there's a brief conversation here. Hey, have you, piano player priest, seen this other priest that I've seen around campus? You know, the handsome one who's a boxer type guy. And the priest goes, oh yeah, that's Jason Miller. He's our you know, counselor for priests. He's a trained psychiatrist. A little bit of plot exposition that way. But what a great, I mean, this is so elegant, this whole scene, to just show you so many characters doing stuff. And
although,
then,
can I say one thing?
Yeah.
My only problem with this is that, you know, they make her a movie star. The fact that she's a movie star doesn't really add much of anything to the plot. And I kind of wish that they had just made her a regular person. I think that would have made this a lot more horrifying if somebody had not had the financial means to just continuously throw money at this problem. You know, if it had just been a regular person left to figure this out. But
then I feel like that's important, though, to the plot line, that she is of financial means to afford the medical bills that would have come with trying to research someone's brain during the 70s.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, that's all true. I mean, you could do another film. Sure, it's a great point. It's really good to think about, because when you think about it, these like I said, I mentioned the elements that make up these prestige horror pictures, and one is definitely wealth. In other words, why is she rich? She's rich because audiences like to watch rich people. You know, they like to see nice flower arrangements, and they like to see big cars. So I think to some extent that's what it is, and it allows.
Well, it's still some of the trappings of Gothic horror, and like especially like leftovers of Universal horror, where you have all these people in great costumes having these wonderful parties where everybody is very swell and well dressed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go about the costumes though in this one.
But she, you know, it also gives her the latitude to do all these tests. Like a regular person can't afford like the latest, what at the time was like the latest technology. Even when they talk about putting her on medication, that medication became what we give kids, you know, later. It's just like, it's like candy. But at the time it was like, well, hey, we have this experimental thing. You know, some kids have benefited from this, and you know, it's speed for the most part. But hey, you want to try giving your kid
Ritalin?
Yeah. And so, but you know, at the time that was a lot more rare than it is now, and so all this stuff is, you know, it gives her that latitude to do that, and she's actually really happy. It gives her also a good, like, she can be self-sufficient. You know, her husband's not around, and she still can afford like all this stuff, which, you know, doesn't have to be that way. But I think having her be an actress gives.
They could have given her any real reason. They could have given her wealth through any means, or they could have had her.
I think it just wastes a lot of time that I think you could. I don't think we need that whole business.
Well, so there's 2 points going on here. I mean, one is, you know, it'd be interesting if she were not an actress, and the other is it'd be interesting if she were not wealthy. I think it's interesting that she's both, but it's true. I mean, if you had her be, let's say this character with the possessed daughter is a teacher somewhere in Washington, D.C., living in a couple of rooms in an old house that she's renting, you know, and she barely has 2 pennies to stretch together, it would change the way these things go. you know. And I'm sure that there are movies like that. I'm just blanking out because every prestige horror movie I've ever seen always winds up with a lot of wealth. George C. Scott in The Changeling has an enormous house that admittedly he's renting, but he's renting it because he has a really prestigious job as like the head of the music department at this major university up in Washington. You know, it's always slick. In fact, the only one of these I can think of that doesn't work that way is it called The Car? Yes, The Car. And in that one, all the protagonists are cops. They don't have money. But yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, that's true. You know, we have to sort of grapple with the meaning of wealth in this movie. Go ahead.
I find it interesting because it's, you know, without the wealth, like we were saying, how would they establish that she was actually possessed? Because it comes from the doctor who suggests that this girl, she thinks she's possessed. So he's insinuating that it's psychosomatic. But if this woman was like, you know, like, I think that adds to the horror aspect of it, or at least the suspense, is that, you know, the everyday person is not this rich actor who gets to have astronauts come to their cocktail party.
You're saying because of her wealth earns her a certain amount of distance and cynicism.
Well, not just that, but also she can say, I've paid every single doctor that we've seen all the doctors, we've been to the best specialists.
But
there's a scene where she summons like basically every doctor she's ever met in one room, which I think is
every doctor available in the world. Yeah.
But Julia, maybe you probably, of all people here, would understand this more. And may say maybe only because you're a mother, but your kids are awesome, so probably not. But I know growing up, when I had a sister who, you know, she was Rebecca the Wrecker, she would act out. There were times when my mom would really think that I don't know if she would seriously think it, but I know she'd joke and say, like, she's like, oh my God, she's possessed.
Yeah.
You know, because the tantrums and whatnot that she would throw.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, I think at the back of every parent's mind, when their child acts in such a behavior that is totally uncontrollable, because of that lack of control, there's got to be that need to identify it. And if you can't identify it, then what could it be? It has to be something supernatural, something otherworldly.
Or an illness, which is what they start out thinking. I mean, it's just like, if it's an illness, if it's like a lesion or a tumor or something, that's something they can explain. But she knows that it's not, because she's seen what happens to the room. I mean, she's seen the bed moving, and eventually she sees the records flying across her. So it becomes more than just the girl's body. It becomes about space that she's in.
Well, if you took out the elegance, you could still do the scariness of, like, you know, in other words, she could disrupt class. You know, she could disrupt her piano lessons. You know, she could disrupt any middle class thing you want to imagine.
Oh yeah,
I will say
disruptions are what's scary. It's just the fact that, or it's not the location. I shouldn't say it's not the location. It's not that she's in this lovely bedroom, you know, like on the second floor of a Georgetown flat or brownstone. You know, I think it's the fact that this could be anyone's child suddenly just acting out.
Did you know that the apartment that the story takes place was actually inhabited at one point by William Blatty when he was a student at Georgetown?
I've actually been there. I've actually gone on those steps, and they're
we've been to the steps.
Scary.
I'm talking about the actual apartment.
Oh no, I haven't been in the apartment, but I've been to the stairs.
Yeah, no, because I actually went to Georgetown Law, but it was like, you know, but so it wasn't in Georgetown proper, but we went down there. But yeah, but this is actually the apartment was his apartment, was the author's apartment.
It's really funny because at the top of those steps is not actually a mansion. The top of those steps is really adjacent to, if I recall, like a gas station. I mean,
well, the mansion is close by, but it's not close enough. They had to actually extend it to be like an extra wing, so that they would be close enough that you could be, that the guy, that the director could be thrown from the window.
It's all movie magic.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they never really show the steps literally go right up to the house. They'll show one perspective where your guy comes up, and another perspective where, you know, you're at the door.
Walking up.
Yeah, but there's really nothing there. If you go there, you know, last I checked, you know, if you go there.
Yeah, no, there's still nothing really. But they took it was a half an inch of rubber that it took for them to cover it so that the stunt guy could go down it twice.
Drew, you were going to say something. Yeah. You said something about place, but we stepped over you.
Is he still there? Maybe he went away.
Okay. All right.
Well, I had something I would like to say.
Yes, that's what we were asking.
Right.
I will say this about the party with the astronaut and the whole swankiness of her lifestyle. One of my favorite lines in the movie that comes out of Reagan's mouth is "You're gonna die up there." It's so simple and chilling, and I love that one bit, and especially the look the actor playing the astronaut gets on his face after she says it. Because I always imagine being an astronaut, you kind of would be a little fearful every time you had to go on a space mission, because it does seem a little crazy to be shot up in a rocket.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Well, then that's the scene also. Then when she has the has the accident, right?
Oh my God! Yeah, we hadn't even mentioned the fact that yes, all these people, these men of science, astronauts, people going into space, and really hip priests who can play piano, all these guys, and into it, they are all struck completely dumb by a 12-year-old who walks in and urinates, which completely breaks all taboos.
Yeah, says creepy things and then pees on the carpet. On the Persian rug. Yeah.
And it's so taboo breaking that they are just struck dumb. And these are people who consider themselves pretty daring, I'm sure. So that's neat. I mean, that's really cool, and that's the point when the movie just sort of really starts to careen, because now she starts looking for doctors seriously, and it's very soon that the doctors have poked and prodded this girl as much as they can. They can't find anything, and Reagan is getting really bad, and they've had to, they're having to do things like pad her bed and so forth, and the doctors go, you know what? Here's something interesting. I don't know if you're Jewish or Catholic, but if you get like one of your community leaders and you convince Reagan that he can maybe cast out demons, which are actually just a psychosomatic thing, don't worry about it, that might work.
Don't worry about it.
They haven't seen the records flying across the room and the bed shaking violently. They just think that it's just her. But I mean, when you see her, like, oh my gosh, that scene once
they have seen it. They do see it.
The doctors have not seen the ghostly stuff. They've only seen her acting crazy and yelling out horrible things.
And they believe that she can make the bed jump in the same means that, just a clever stage performer.
But they haven't seen it actually happen. They just heard about it from the mom. So they always can dismiss everything and just say. So he comes around to saying, you could have somebody come in, and that way she'll be convinced psychologically. So she does have the priest, and I'm trying to remember the order. I actually wrote it down, but I'm trying to remember the order of events as far as when all the memorable stuff happens, like the head turning and the spewing.
It's because
that's what
they
the
have
doctors
the drunk,
though are in there.
They have Arthur or Burke, or as I like to think of him, Arthur, watch her while they think after they get her doped up, and then when they come back and the window is wide open, and then they find out that he fell out out the window, and his head's been twisted completely around.
Right, but that's his head. I'm talking about her head, when her head spins around.
No, I know, but those two things tie together.
Mm-hmm.
The other very shocking thing that happens in this arena before she starts to go grab a priest is after Burke is dead, but before she's gone after a priest, she comes up to the room, and for the first time there's like really crazy stuff going on. The devil locks the door. The girl is impaling herself in the vagina with a crucifix. There are records and books flying around the room.
Right.
But
only Mom sees that.
And she tries to crush her with like a giant bookshelf.
Right.
And this is all shocking as all get out. I mean, this is insane.
No, it's horrific.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
It's astonishing.
And also, again, at the time, especially for, a big budget thing with a, name actors and everything. Now we've got a, crucifix masturbation scene, and real actors,
not even what
little
they
girl
call it,
actors, and like all of it is just wow. What are we watching here?
They call it masturbation, but it's really just, like Jason said, it's really more like stabbing. And then she's saying, she's dropping the F-bomb left and right, and in this weird voice that's not hers, and it's just very creepy and scary.
Oh man, and she talks about how are we, they talk a lot in the interviews about, okay, well you're going to do this scene, what a weird profession. We're yeah, this is still somebody who afterwards has to, go about their daily life.
But that's why they picked her, though, because she already seemed so worldly wise, even just talking. She already seemed like she knew all this stuff. He asked her, well, do you know what masturbating is? And she's like, yeah. He's like, have you ever done it? She's like, sure, haven't you? All this stuff. And he said she's just kind of a lot older than her years.
Huh.
Wait.
Well,
wait, she did. Wait, who?
Linda
Blair?
Blair?
Yeah, Linda Blair.
Really? Because
when he was hiring her.
Oh, I thought that she didn't realize everything, and that was part of it.
No, she's actually the one yelling the F word. She's that point.
I knew she knew, but they said that it was when the doctors walk in, in that scene where, her head does spin around and she, throws out the pea soup and everything. She, and that just the obscenity and of it all, it, just totally threw that guy who's totally lost his lines, and and he's just totally taken back. But I thought that was actually because she was so naive and innocent in real life. That wasn't the case. Wow.
Really?
Well, I think they talk a lot about her being one of the reasons was she had a balance of being naive, but then also she kind of knew the craft. She'd been working, but also. She even talks about it, and from the interviews you see with her, there is an undercurrent of I don't know if that was the best thing for a kid to do.
Right.
In retrospect.
Linda Blair as an adult does not seem as screwed up as a lot of other former child stars.
But I gotta say, when a 12-year-old says, "Hey, don't worry, I'm totally hip and I know what all this stuff is, and we're good. You can do any crazy thing you want." The 12-year-old is the last person you should listen to.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I was wondering how they got away with that as well. How old she was during the making of this movie, because it's clearly her parents must.
No, she's 12. She was 12 when they cast
her.
Yeah,
by the way, she plays. Look how good she is. In the early scenes compared with the demonic scenes. She's a really and look. I don't care if she doesn't do the voice. When she turns her eyes to the priest and sort of looks from underneath her own brow at him with this sort of deep, really, really unrelentingly dark view, and you
brilliant.
go, wow, she's good. Oh my God.
No, it's brilliant. No, they went through so many kids to try to find the right kid, and he was so frustrated that he was thinking about using dwarf actors instead because he couldn't find anybody. And then finally she came along and she just.
So that means there's an alternate universe with a little person in the lead role.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Strange. Yeah. Billy Barty would have played the priest too. Yeah.
But the thing the clincher though, when they go, okay, it's time to call in, is definitely when the crab walk thing happens. When it's finally okay, there is truly my daughter shouldn't crawl backwards down the stairs and then vomit blood.
Right.
It's really where she starts really calling. And by the way, I have a good story about that. So my friend, this good friend of mine, I can't remember if we saw the director's cut together or not, but that scene, because for years and years and years you'd never seen that scene, and then he was fine with the movie because it all took place in the room, right? Once she's in the room, she's in the room. But once you introduced the fact that the devil could get out of the room and just go careening around the house and doing whatever, he was like, I'm out. And this one time we were at supper and, we were having dinner and, my wife was like, oh, yeah, well, she can totally get out. He's like, no, stop it. She's like, yeah, she can just get out whenever she wants. And he was like, you stop. Like, it's one of the first times I've ever seen him just really, really adamant about a horror movie. Like, we're not talking about this anymore. Because everything was nice and compartmentalized. But once the devil could get out and do that, like, because everything is so realistic. All the life parts of it are so realistic that it really, really struck him as, nope, that's it, I'm out. But he really and then we actually apologized because we just kept on, like, of course, you're a good friend, so what do? You rag, no, it can get out anytime, shut up. But
I think you just hit the nail on the head, though. I mean, one of the things that does work about this movie is the idea that, the randomness of evil, and that evil could be anywhere, and that if it can strike this very nice 12-year-old girl, evil can be in all of us.
Well, and maybe that's part of what the whole wealthy actress thing is too. Is not only can it strike a 12-year-old girl, but it can strike an upper class 12-year-old girl.
I have less sympathy for the upper class. I will just admit that.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, the idea, the notion that nobody is safe, no matter how rich you are,
no matter how much money she spends, she has no insulation against this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the devil doesn't care. In fact, you may enjoy it more.
Yeah.
but I think there's that great dialogue they have too, where why would this happen? What's the point of this? This happening to this little girl? And they say, I think it's for despair. Basically, the devil wants to show that this could be anybody. Look how pervasive evil is. Like, I can do this to the least of you, kind of thing. And it's such a great scene when they're talking about that too. And it's true. It's like, this is truly the most evil. It's random and terrible and awful to see, and frustrating for everyone involved. Like, why is this happening?
Well, and the hero is Jason Miller as a very working class priest.
Damien, the wonderfully named Damien Karras.
Yeah,
and by the way, did you know that Stacy Keach was supposed to do that role, and then they fired him when they found Jason Miller?
Really?
Yeah, they bought out his contract.
Wow, that's really strange. Because Keach was a decent star at the time.
Well, he didn't do anything wrong. It's just that he saw William Friedkin saw Jason Miller in a Broadway play and was like.
I mean, I agree that Miller is probably way finer than Stacy Keach would have been. And I love Stacy Keach, but
I think Gabriel Byrne would have been awesome, but he's like the same basically.
Right.
But before we get into the priest, I want to bring up something like a personal experience about this, and I would like to ask everybody like the psychological component about this. And there's something they even talk about in the movie about how most cases of possession now are just thought to be reports of schizophrenia or some kind of mental illness and people not understanding what they're saying. And I, in fact, was in a therapy group in my 20s. And, without, turning this into confessional, no pun intended, I had a fellow patient in this therapy group accuse me of being possessed and try to throttle me on the spot. And, it always made me think back. So it was like, oh, man, it gave me these sort of ambivalent feelings to the I talked about the romantic feelings of, the romanticized view of this movie, but it gave me sort of a different look on this, too, where I can look at it like that. And, I am curious, what everybody, would this movie work if it was not implicitly supernatural, if we could just look at it, okay, this is a girl with a severe chemical imbalance or something like that.
Well, then it would become a psychological thriller, which is also has, great value. I love psychological thrillers.
I think since then we've had movies where that's been the case, and it is, and certainly books, and a lot of possessions, medically have been that, or people with all kinds of mental illness, and then, people trying to prove, well, it's all mental illness, and then you have some who believe in the supernatural who are also like, well, no, there's these cases, and we can't explain them. And so there's the gamut of that has already been kind of like, it would be a different movie for sure,
Yeah.
because that movie is a different movie about questioning people's faith, etc. Whereas this is a movie about, and I think they put it pretty succinctly in some of the interviews, about if you bring to the movie that the world is terrible and evil always wins, you can see that because, the priest dies. If you bring it to it that good can triumph over evil, it's also got that because Karras is going to heaven at the end. And Friedkin talks about, like, each time you see Karras, he's rising. That was a motif. Yeah. He's walking upstairs. He's walking over a hill. He's coming upstairs. He's doing all this stuff. And he was very, I did that on purpose because at the end, even though he dies falling down the stairs, he then rises again. And that was, Friedkin doing that on purpose. But I don't know if it would just be a way different movie. And, again, there's been those movies since then. Hey, it's just a medical thing. But it's a
I go either way on the subject. I'm open-minded to the I have, certain religious beliefs. I'm open-minded to the possibility of the paranormal. But I do also have that skeptical part of my brain that questions all of this.
Do a movie like that. I'm trying to think of one because they're generally less exciting to people. A movie where you find out all the supernatural stuff turned out to be misunderstood science. House did that a lot on TV. Where they take it for granted on that show that there is no supernatural. So whatever seems to be supernatural is actually just a misunderstood, interesting effect going on. Something strange is happening that's causing something supernatural to appear to happen. But here,
they get rid of all that because records fly across.
This is way supernatural. In House, you could have records fly around, and then you'd find out that actually the thing is there's a gas leak in that room, and it's causing people to hallucinate. But that's not the case.
Well, somebody twists their head all the way around.
But again, that's
like an owl.
Jason's saying that on House it would end up being a hallucination and all those things that they see.
But that's how they handle the really crazy stuff. But Jason Miller comes into the picture because he's the local priest who counsels priests, and Ellen Burstyn wants to see a priest come and see if her daughter is demonic. But the thing is, Jason Miller is grappling with his own faith crisis because his mom died recently. That sucked because she was in a public public hospital. She couldn't take care of herself. She was
put in a mental institution, not even just a senior care facility, like an actual mental.
Right, and then presumably moved back out and immediately died. He wasn't around for that. And
well, again, it also is partly because he's also feeling guilt because if he could make a ton of money just being a psychologist.
Right,
but he's a priest, and so makes doesn't make money.
Yeah.
So
which is another, again, bringing it back. It's an interesting question because at first when you brought up the question of the wealth of the mom, I was like, I don't really think that's such an important issue. And now I keep thinking about it. I'm like, there again, we have the contrast between him thinking, well, if I'd had more money, I could have helped my mom, and this woman having all the money in the world not being able to help her daughter.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. Yeah.
No, it's well designed, and I should point out, by the way, the book by Blatty I have not read, but he did something really strange, and in 2010, I think it was, so very, very recently, he released a new version of the book, like a 40th anniversary, 40-year, whatever you want to call it, 40th anniversary edition of the book, and he literally did an edit on the whole book. He toned up descriptions, he toned up dialogue. In other words, just another draft of The Exorcist. He said, I was in a hurry when I did it in 1970, and so this is the draft I would have done if I had had a chance to go over it again. How do you feel about that?
It's like Lucas redoing Star Wars, screw that.
Yeah,
it's a tough one.
Well, we forget, by the way, how many versions of The Hobbit there were.
Boy,
people seem to be mostly okay with that. But I don't know. There's a good bit as well. And I know I keep going because, like I said, I watched a lot of Exorcist over the past week while I was doing work on my laptop. I had the commentaries on and stuff. And there's a whole thing where where Friedkin's telling Blatty, like, look, this is never going to be the film that that you want it to be. He's like, sometimes you just have to let it go. Because evidently Blatty just wanted more and more and more, and he actually was pushing more for the director's cut stuff. And so I'm guessing that this is an extension of, well, if the movie couldn't be the movie I wanted it to be, even with the extended parts, then maybe I can go back and, pump up. It's been forever since I've read the first book. I've read Legion more times just because I like Exorcist 3 a lot. But I haven't read The Exorcist proper in, it's been a really long time. So I'd be curious what the differences are. I don't know. I mean,
I remember everybody loving Legion when it came out, and I remember having friends all through school who were like, that book is really good, that's an excellent, the sequel to The Exorcist it was called, so I haven't read it, but I've heard that it was quite well.
I liked it a lot, actually.
I was reviewing my notes of stuff that we haven't talked about yet, and I was wondering what you guys think of the whole business of the church. Like, they haven't done exorcisms in forever, and they have a policy for it, but you have to be able to, like, there has to be speaking in tongues, and all this stuff has to happen that they'll accept, and he hasn't been able to find anything. So he records, he goes and tries to record her saying stuff, and he, like, uses water that he says is holy water, and she claims that it burns, but he says it's not really holy water. And then when she's speaking in tongues, it's actually English backwards, where she's saying, let her die, fear the priest, and then Marin, which is actually the most telling thing, is that randomly this.
So what does all that mean?
Marin.
In other words, why is the demon screwing around? The demon, knows from holy water, right? Or does it? I mean,
he's a demon. He lies.
Right.
Yeah. He lies.
That's what they do.
That is awesome. Another, I keep going back to it. But another thing they said was the priest.
Marin.
Karis. Karis, the actor. A priest who was, actually there since they had all the priests, gave him a medal during shooting and said, look, you're going to need this because anytime you try to expose the devil as being a trickster, he's going to go after you.
Right.
Like,
he's
once you
William
expose him, like, here's this thing.
Yeah.
And then the priest who gave him, like, a few days later, he had died.
Wow.
They said, like, 9 people died during the, because it was, like, shot over, like, 15 months or something. But he gave him this medal and said, you need this, like, you're going to need this as protection, because once you do something like this and you're after the devil, he's going to ruin you.
No, but he didn't die. That priest didn't die. William O'Malley didn't die.
No, but the priest gave him, what I'm talking about in real life.
The priest who gave him the medal to, like,
in real
protect
life, like
William Miller.
But I'm saying the priest, the guy William O'Malley, who's in the movie, did not die. Did he die?
No, I'm not saying that. I never said that.
This is other real guy.
Yeah.
There was a priest who
there was
gave
a bunch
him
of weird stuff.
A medal and said, you need this.
And
he's like,
it gets creepier, though. The rest of that is that 3 days later, what's his name? Miller, the priest's his real son in real life was on set riding a bicycle and was hit by a motorbike. And was in critical condition and everything. Like, they didn't know if he was even going to make it. And that was, like, during the filming of this movie. And that's, like, one of the many, cursed. Accidents.
Well, the guy who gave him the medal, he said, like, he's walking through the halls and he looks and he sees this room and he's like, is that a coffin? And he goes in and it's the priest who gave him the medal, like, in the coffin. So he actually saw him.
Oh my God.
In state, like, a few days later, like, whoa, there's that. I have this object that this person lying in front of me gave me just a few days ago. It's pretty. I mean, a lot of the actors talk about, well, people die during when it's a few weeks, nobody does, but over 15 months. But there was still a lot of weird bits.
Oh my gosh! The actual exorcism, when the 2 priests are in there and all this stuff's going on, that's fascinating. It's like when they're yelling, "The power of Christ compels you."
Yeah, in fact, we should go straight to that. We talked about the the working class Jason Miller. So he realizes very quickly, yep, this girl is definitely possessed. He very quickly gets the bishops to go, yeah, okay, sounds good. And so he calls on Father Merrin.
Well, and also the demon had called Father Merrin. I mean, the demon had actually called him.
The demon mentions by name, beware the priest, Merrin. And so they call Father Merrin.
Well, they imply that they talk about how he's performed an exorcism before in Africa and that it nearly killed him.
Right.
And the implication that I think that we're supposed to get from that is that the evil spirit that's in Reagan is the same evil spirit that he's confronted once before, and then also...
I never got that, but it didn't...
That's always been my read of it. That's always been my read of it.
I just thought that he was a gunslinger and he had faced...
well, but then why would the demon be calling out for Merrin?
Because he has a reputation. He's the first.
Yeah, but not to mention
he's
the fastest holy water in the West.
Yeah, but the police investigator finds the idol outside of the house after.
That's true. Jamie's right about that. He finds an idol of Pazuzu outside the house.
There's also somebody who is
the same one that Merrin found in the desert.
No, I don't disagree with you. I'm totally convinced. Yes, Pazuzu found him in Iraq, and now here he is in Washington D.C.
Right.
Good. Yes. However, I don't accept that it's also Pazuzu who was in Africa, because why would there be only one demon circling the earth possessing people? It seems
they're not saying there's one demon. They're saying there's one demon that,
that Merrin has a beef with and has a beef with Merrin.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's not like there's one exorcism ever.
Yeah, it's Batman and the Joker. That's right. Yeah, I suppose that's correct.
Superman could take care of all of Batman's villains in like an afternoon if you wanted to, but they like harassing Bruce Wayne.
So
I don't know if I would
sets out the whole.
Okay,
sorry. I'm sorry. What were you saying, Jamie?
No, I was going to say. I was like, I don't think that you're supposed to think that they're just arch nemeses. I mean, I guess you could assume like Batman and Joker, but I think it's more so the fact that it does have to do why would they show that he had found the idol in Iraq, without...
No, I get that. I'm with you. I'm convinced.
Okay.
However, they also established that he did an exorcism a decade ago or so in Africa.
Right. It's a different thing, separate from Iraq.
And that he West Africa, and that it was tough and it nearly killed him. I agree with you. Yes, idol in Iraq is demon in Washington, D.C. I don't agree that...
Well, also not just the idol, but the statue, too.
Yeah. Okay, so who's the Joker who is putting weird conical things on the Madonna at the church? I'm just curious.
That has to be
I think Reagan's somehow doing that.
Yeah, it has to be Reagan.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Right.
I've never... That never worked out for me.
Okay.
In my head, there was like a motorcycle gang that was carrying around.
No. It's all. The consecration is tied to the.
No. I know it's tied. I get it.
Well, I mean, it's the same demon.
I was like, who is?
There's a side movie in Jason's head. There's a lower budget 70s horror film about a Satan worshipping biker gang.
I want to see this made where the biker gang who brings idol around and demon possesses each town that they go to. I want to see that movie. That would be awesome.
In my mind, it's Malcolm McDowell, by the way. And
well, now it starts to sound more like The Omen or Rosemary's Baby, where they've got this crew of Satan worshippers.
God, wasn't that the coolest?
Yeah.
This is all the same universe. We've just now decided that The Omen, The Exorcist, and Rosemary's Baby,
and Sons of Anarchy.
Yes, that's right.
This is amazing. I really want to see this crazy demon biker movie.
Write that, my friend.
And then Adam West Batman.
Right after you write your Fire Shark or whatever it was.
Fire Shark versus Bear Shark.
Yeah.
I think the idea of a satanic biker gang, led by Malcolm McDowell, with I think Russ Tamlin as the sarcastic second in command, you're good to go.
And then they all are taken out by Roger Moore, James Bond.
It's hard to beat Race with the Devil, though, as far as sheer chase.
Okay, but
yes. Okay.
Demonology, though.
Race with the Devil, by the way, yes, totally. Okay, Father Merrin now, we should touch on in the next few minutes, and then totally move to final thoughts, because there's no way we could do this.
This is our 100th episode. We can talk as long as we want.
Well, that's true.
I think we should go for 100 minutes in the 100th episode.
The big okay. The place where we are in the movie is really the end of the movie, because the movie is quite tight. Yeah. Once Marin shows up, it is time for the big exorcism, which is broken up into two pieces. Meeting the demon, they take a break, and just to give a brief synopsis, they take a break. Marin has a heart attack, and Karis finishes it all. But the way it starts,
we don't know if Marin has a heart attack. We just know that he's dead when
he seems to have a heart. He has a heart condition. He has a problem. But so for the first half, this is really like a miniature movie, because you have the protagonist, which is Father Karis, and now you have the mentor who shows up, and the mentor, as with all movies, dies 3/4 of the way through, so that the protagonist can be the one to pick up the scepter of it and finish it all. But Marin is there to give Father Karis this really fast sort of primer on demonic possession.
Yeah, he gives him the primer. He talks about how the demon lies and how it's going to mix the truth with the lies and don't believe it.
Oh,
and then at one
point,
when he leaves to go take his heart medication, he comes back in, and Karis is with the demon, and the demon is speaking in Karis's late mother's voice.
Yeah, that's really creepy, by the way.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
It's very scary, and it's something that anybody in the audience can identify with. You might not be able to identify with certain things like in Dracula movies or whatever, but, they can all identify with my mom has died, my aunt, and that's, or loved ones. So the idea of this little girl possessed by the demon and telling you that your loved ones, who maybe you feel guilt about, are suffering in hell, is deeply affecting. That's really brilliant, really, really wonderful.
So that's when he says, don't listen, just get out. And so Karis leaves, and when he comes back, Marin is dead.
Yes.
And then he starts to really just lash out at the demon, and he's like, take me, get out of her, take me. And so the demon does, in fact, jump over into Karis, and then Karis throws himself out the window and down the steps and dies.
To commit to it seems, at least for now, to stop the reign of terror of this demon. Before we move on from this, I just want to point out favorite things. If you have favorite things, tell me about this exorcism. But to me, the best part is Father Marin has his shit together so well that when he shows up and he's like, okay, let's start the call and response, and he starts to do the call and response, and Damien. And he tells Damien, hey, run off to the church, grab this book, the big one, blah, blah, blah. They come back, they're doing their incantation, the bed starts levitating, and Jason Miller is just literally struck frozen.
Because this is the first time he believes that it's actually a demon.
He is just frozen with fear. And Marin just sort of casually, he never yells, he never gets angry. He's always like, he says the response, please, Damien, and it's just so lovely. It's really neat to suddenly see this partnership that only exists for about 10 or 15 minutes on the screen, if that.
Yeah.
That's just beautiful.
And that's when we do see all those iconic images of the demon's head turning 360 degrees and the spewing the green, vomit. And
they put that, by the way, they took that doll out and about and would have it in like a taxi and let people come by and then let it spin its head to test it out.
My
see
God.
what people
that's
did.
So funny.
Oh, man.
That's
it's
so
a doll.
rude.
I don't know if people are aware that that's a doll. When I watched
creepy.
it, I thought that
You
what
thought
they
her
were
head
doing,
actually was going around?
I thought they did a trick where I thought they did a stage trick where the actress goes in, the actress does a spin somehow by shifting her weight underneath a body. I thought the body was a doll, but the head was. But no, it's just all a doll. It's just all a big puppet, which is great.
I'm so glad they talk a lot about how they had to do it practical, and I'm so glad because it comes out just so well, like all the effects.
Yeah.
To the detriment of the actors, because they talked about like all the times that they threw the actors around, especially like when Reagan's thrashing around on the bed and everything. Like she was doing that, and then the harness thing broke, and so she was like actually hurting her back.
Yeah.
Ellen Burstyn
when her
broke
mom
her
gets
tailbone.
when her mom gets thrown around, there's film they move in with the camera, and she's like, "Get that freaking camera out of my face!" Like,
yeah, so many people were injured and.
But all of that practical stuff. I mean, it adds.
Oh yeah, and that one.
I'm glad
the
it's
woman,
before CG. You know,
the woman who does the voice of the demon, basically, she actually like totally screwed up her throat just to do that, and would like swallow like egg. What is it, like raw eggshells or something? I mean,
she
did all these
was
horrible
raw
things.
eggs and like mushed apples, and she would chain smoke and then throw up that
drink,
mixture.
And she was actually a recovering alcoholic, so that was a big thing that she was like drinking whiskey to do that. But she actually tied herself up to to do the sound so that she would be authentic, like tied herself up the way that the character was bound up so that she would sound authentic and try and fighting against the binds and all that stuff. So that's all very, very cool.
So going on kind of a little more into that, like, and how everybody was used in this movie, but, you know, the faces that you see, like the I guess you're supposed to assume it's Pazuzu, but like the demonic face that you see in the wall, and, you know, that's Eileen Dietz, that face, and she's painted up like that, but when you see Linda Blair throwing up, that's actually Eileen Dietz made to look like, and you know, Linda Blair, but they have like these plastic, what do they call it?
A mold.
Like, yeah, kind of like a mold. Yeah, exactly. But it made it so that she wasn't able to close her mouth, and they would be there trying to get the you know, like it's the pressure right of the pea soup, and she would be there for like, you know, hours not being able to close her mouth or swallow, and she actually sued the movie. Like, she sued everybody because she wanted credit, like she wasn't credited as being like, and she wanted, but the weird thing was how she wanted to be credited. It wasn't that she just wanted to be like a double or, you know, like a stunt woman, but she wanted to actually be listing as like the puking, how did she,
the puking Pazuzu?
Yeah, not puking Pazuzu, but
Puking
Reagan. Puking Reagan. And it was just,
that's a great punk band name, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But she lost the suit, but I just thought, it's like, maybe she would have won if she had kind of gone for a different credit, but I thought that was so interesting.
It is very interesting. You know, yeah.
And she was on Happy Days and, like, General Hospital, but she was kind of like a no-name character actress who's been in a ton of things.
She has a great face. I mean, she's really good as Captain Howdy. You know, when they show her, she shows up a lot in shadow in this movie. One of the neatest eerie tricks the movie does is it'll pop Captain Howdy's face into random corners.
I don't know. There's actually some debate as to whether, like, because Friedkin says that it's actually just early shots of makeup shots of trying to get the makeup right for Linda Blair. So it's actually her, the actress who is the one going around saying that that's her, but the director disagrees.
Oh, really?
So I think that's really interesting.
But she's definitely Captain Howdy, regardless, which is the one with the white face and the weird.
That's what I'm saying. He says no. He says that that was actually Linda Blair.
That is not Linda
Blair.
In
early makeup shots.
The white face. They go through there's a whole thing. Like, if you have the Blu-ray, that's definitely not it, because they show, and they have the guy who made the puking device and everything, and he's like, no, it's her. Here's the way I did it.
That's the puking thing, not the puking thing.
The Captain Howdy. I got it.
Again, like, I gotta just say, like, Dick Smith, the guy that did all the makeup for this movie, recently passed, and, you know, you're talking about the awesomeness of practical effects. Like, you gotta tip your. There was no movies like this when this came out, and I mean, I wasn't alive when this came out, but I mean, I've seen tons of horror films that are contemporary of this, and there is nothing like this. You know, the closest as far as elaborate makeup effects would be Planet of the Apes, which is, of course, nothing like this.
Okay, this is I'm talking about, though, as far as the part with the white-faced demon. I guess that's the difference. Is we're not talking about the throwing out part. We're talking about the white-faced demon. It says on IMDb, it says, according to William Friedkin, the subliminal shots of the white-faced demon are actually rejected makeup tests for Reagan's possessed appearance. So maybe that means
Reagan test.
And it's,
but it was on Eileen D. That's
okay. So it's on Eileen. Okay.
And it sounds like William Friedkin is bitter that he got sued to me.
Yeah. Sure.
That's fascinating. Yeah, he's probably sick of listening to that.
We never talked about the there's actually a cop movie going on behind all this other stuff.
I know.
Right.
The random detective who showed up in Daughters of Darkness is not really the same actor, but it's the same part.
It's Columbo, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. You have another working class guy. In this case, it's the detective who's trying to figure out how Burke, the director, wound up throwing himself out a window and turning his head around and so forth. But to be honest with you, it's almost like a novel plot that never really pays off, to be honest. Because it gets dropped.
But he comes out in Legion.
That character is the main character in Legion.
What's funny also is his quirkiness that is in The Exorcist is way more in Legion, but not so much in Exorcist 3. So, the character that's in Exorcist is closer, but I think it's the way it was written as well. And I love Exorcist 3, but just the way he's presented in Exorcist is a lot closer to the book, and the way he's presented in Legion that just doesn't come across on the screen, which I thought was fascinating, watching it again, especially the ending, the restored ending from the director's cut.
I do think he's actually very important to The Exorcist, to this one, because without him, he's the one. He is the seed that, yes, Ellen had seen Captain the weird stuff where suddenly the Ouija board shifts suddenly when Reagan's touching it in the first few scenes where so she doesn't seem to pick up on it, and she still doesn't after Reagan throws a golden shower at the cocktail party, doesn't seem to think there's anything really demonic. She just thinks her child's mentally ill. And it doesn't seem to dawn on this woman that this is happening until he says that, this man was not just, he didn't just fall drunkenly down the stairs. His head was completely turned around. How could there have been somebody in this room strong enough to do this? And then she starts thinking about, what was there someone in there? And then who could be in there? And then the noise in the attic happens. So without him, kind of going there, he's, what opens her eyes to the possible demonic possession, in my opinion.
Well, I love these wonderful servants that are so loyal, by the way.
Yes. No, I was just saying, look, it's true. So, Jamie, you're absolutely right that he fulfills that function and is an important part of the plot. But if you took him out, you could put all that stuff in somebody else's mouth. In other words, somehow or another.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
He is a great character.
Yeah, he's very watchable, and considering the movie.
But why is he always asking the priests out to the movies? That just weirded me out.
He's lonely.
No.
He wants bro friends. That's not weird at all.
Okay.
I think that's quite sincere.
He's actually, and like I said, it comes across more in Legion. He's actually kind of a weirdo and definitely a loner, and the rest of the police force is wow, that guy's kind of strange. And he does really love cinema. You'll see him go into the cinema, and so that's just part of.
That's part of
the quirkiness comes across, and that's why I was always, especially after I read it, that's just one of his things, and it doesn't come across as much in Exorcist 3, but it's in the books where that's just one of his, and he's kind of a loner pariah kind of guy in the force. Oh, man, that guy, he's out on the scene. I don't like talking to that guy kind of thing. And everybody kind of treats him with kid gloves, and it's kind of just humors him as far as the rest of the detectives on the force. but yeah, it's just one of those weird things that he does. That particular
I just wasn't
character.
sure. I was like, that just weirded me out for some reason.
No, he's supposed to be an odd,
found that strange.
An odd duck. Yeah, he's a weirdo, and they kind of hint on that. Like I said, it comes across more in Legion, but they didn't really write much of that into the movie.
It's weird, but it's a mild eccentric kind of weird.
Yeah, he's definitely an eccentric. That's what.
No, and I can see though in the world of movie cops, they don't cotton to like these just random eccentric guys who quote movies and plays all the time and stuff like that.
Yeah.
He's a neat character. Well, we should probably move to our final thoughts. I as we often say with major films like this, we could probably do several sessions on it. But let's get to final thoughts on The Exorcist and then come around for endorsements. So we'll go same order: Tony, Jamie, Drew, Julia, and then I'll go. So Tony, final thoughts on The Exorcist.
I really like it, and I think that while sometimes the director's cut can be a crutch, or it can be, that's neat. I think definitely when I saw it, especially in the theater, I think it's a scarier version of the movie. But I think that there's a lot of really great. There's so many great performances. I think the movie is really effective.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it as a kid, certainly, but I saw it much later. And each time I revisit it, I noticed, a bit more nuance. And I really, especially diving in, head first into everything that was just about everything except the regular cut in the Blu-rays. Like, yeah, this is one of those that I definitely would watch, and I think it's also one of the films you can learn from as far as, that you can do film studies on this film alone and how it's put together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's part of why they got Friedkin, because they were looking for a more documentary style. They didn't want it to be a super, horror movie. And so they thought his style would work. And I think that was a great choice. I think it's one of those kind of everything coming together in a weird way and making something that, regardless of what you think about it, it certainly spawned a lot of movies, not nearly as good, and some that would be, that strive to be this good. And, the ripple effect from it went a long way. It also led to, a lot of the devil scare of the 80s, but
that's right.
Oh well. You take the good and the bad, I guess.
Yeah, the Exorcist.
Booga.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Jamie, final thoughts, The Exorcist?
Well, I do suggest everybody eventually watches it at some point. Everyone now. I guess it's kind of a teach their own movie, but it is a classic version of it. I personally, I liked it. I feel like you kind of have to be in the right mood for me to be totally enjoying it in that moment. I feel like after seeing it a few times, in my mind, I guess become a little jaded. But just like now more than ever, the metaphor.
We're losing you a little bit, Jamie.
Yeah,
Jamie, you're fading.
But if you come back in a second, we'll let you try again. Drew, final thoughts, The Exorcist.
Well, I feel like I was kind of hard on it during my I don't want to come off like I don't like the movie. I just feel like I have a different take on it. To me, this is a thrilling movie. It's very exciting. It's very shocking. And I definitely think it set the stage for a lot of what followed as far as horror films. Certainly in terms of effects, the films like Texas Chainsaw and Halloween sort of gave a format for the 80s slasher boom, but this sets the stage in a lot of ways with its use of grotesque, odd makeup effects that are very in your face. So there's that aspect of it, and then there's, again, I think there's a sort of a romanticism to this that we, movies don't really deal with faith in the way this movie does anymore, and I think in some ways it's kind of a shame. We're at kind of such a cynical stage where Hollywood just sort of refuses to show faith of any kind, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your religious faith, but faith of any kind in any kind of positive manner. And there's something kind of refreshing to going back and watching something like this, and where it is treated more respectfully and less cynically. And I greatly enjoy that aspect of this movie. So I do recommend, obviously any serious scholar of horror films or film in general needs to see this movie. And it has many fine performances, has excellent lighting and costuming and effects. So I greatly enjoy the movie. I'm just not a devotee of it the same way a lot of people are.
Wow. No, but I thought that was very well said, and I can't wait to get to next week and see how this is going to be. Having said all that wonderful stuff that you said about this, it's going to be fun to do this as a retrospective and see how the different movies handle that.
Oh, too.
Yeah. Before we get, I'm not even going to say a word about it because we'll get to it next week. All right, Miss Julia, final thoughts. The Exorcist.
I'm just so glad that we watched it again. It was my idea to do it for the 100th episode, and ever since I said it out loud, I was kicking myself, going, "Why did I say that?" And then, but I'm glad that we watched, because I do think it's so scary and horrific. It's not scary like things jumping out at you. It's where you scream out, but it's just horrifying. And so I'm kind of proud of myself for watching it, because I feel like it shows that doing this podcast has really helped me sort of face my fears, and because I always hated horror movies. And so, so I think it's been a good experience. I kind of feel like it's been like therapy of some kind, a little bit. But it's a really great film. My only criticism again is that I think that the beginning is too slow. Like, it takes too long to get to all the action. But I get it. I don't feel like if we're going to spend that much time waiting, it's kind of like if you're going to spend that much time waiting to get to the real action, it should be more mood setting and less just sort of like you said, getting to know the 70s and the culture of these people. I don't know. That's just my thought. But otherwise, I mean, it's great. God, the exorcism stuff is fantastic.
Yeah. I have essentially nothing to add to that other than I'm very excited to be doing this retrospective, because to my mind, you can't have a more just crazily wavering retrospective than the series, the Exorcist series. Although maybe the Jaws series would be it, because we are down for the whole thing. We're going to do. We may wish we watched Jaws: The Revenge, because we're going to do The Exorcist, and next week we'll be back for The Exorcist 2, which was a shock to many people, and then The Exorcist 3, which is a sort of unknown surprise to many people, and then Exorcist alternate 4-ish. Because there's two of them, they're the same story. It was a film they loved so much they made it twice, and so that's going to be fun. 5 movies, 5 weeks, a really great way to get into our second 100 episodes. So let's do endorsements. And by the way, let me just say really quickly, thank you all for doing this show and for being with us for the past. 100.
Thank everybody for
wonderful.
It's really been a wonderful part of my life for the past several years. All right, endorsements. What are you reading and what do you recommend? Where do we go? Tony, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely gonna, like I said, get the Blu-ray of this, the 2-disc one. because it is full of just great stuff. I couldn't stop watching it. And if you let the menu, if you want to get super creeped out, leave the menu on, which has all the crazy demon like noises going on just constantly. Oof. Like that, I had left it on. I was walking around the house. It was late at night, and I was working on some like artwork. And man, and I actually had it on I had wireless headphones, so I don't have to disturb anybody when I'm staying up late. And man, that was super creepy. If you want to get scared, do that. It's definitely unnerving. But as far as endorsements go, I know there was something. And now I can't remember, so I'll have to remember. But definitely, I totally endorse the Blu-ray for sure. So cool. It's really, really great.
Awesome. Hey, Jamie, are you back?
I'm back. Yeah, sorry, I got
no. I'm so
for some reason the call just dropped for no reason. But that's okay. My endorsement is probably I would have to say Wilfred. I don't know if anybody's watched this on Netflix, but it's it's a short half-hour comedy starring Elijah Wood and comedian Jason Gann. He's an Australian. And basically it's about this guy who strikes up an unusual friend with or companion in his neighbor's dog, and except it happens after he tries to commit suicide after taking some pills. The neighbor comes over with the dog, and instead of seeing a dog, he sees a man dressed as a dog, and hilarity ensues where nobody else sees Wilfred, who's the dog, as anything but a dog, except for Elijah Wood, and he talks to him, and it's basically a full-on, not only commentary but a satire about mental illness and the struggles of, it's kind of after quarter-life crisis. Yeah, it's really good. It's really funny. It's pretty crude. Forewarning.
Yeah, it gets a little dark.
But
yeah, was watching it, but it is really good. And Elijah Wood I've seen him a lot at Fantastic Fest and Talk Music and stuff. He's a really cool guy off screen as well, and but yeah, that show is really good. It's dark and it is crude, but it's really fun.
And so it's done like single camera, like Scrubs or one of those shows. Which is funny because Wikipedia says it's done with a 3-camera setup, but it looks to me like it's done. Well, I guess it is a 3-camera setup, but it feels much more filmic than a traditional sitcom. Interesting. Well, that's a really great endorsement. I really appreciate that. And by the way, Jamie, if you weren't around when I said it, thank you for being with us too.
Well, thank you guys for having me, and it's always a pleasure being on, and I appreciate being here for such a momentous occasion.
I wish we had cake now, all of a sudden.
Danger cake?
Yeah, hey.
All right, Mr. Drew, endorsements for us this week?
Well, Jamie and I have been partaking a lot of television via Netflix lately, because the other thing we have delved into recently is the TV version of From Dusk Till Dawn. And it's co-produced by Netflix. And I have to say, because I talked about Hemlock Grove back when we were doing the Evil Dead retrospective a lot. This is 1,000 times better than Hemlock Grove. It's not perfect, but it's because it's having to stretch out a 2-hour movie into a now 10-episode season of TV. There's some characters that are spread a little thin. There's some characters that are definitely made more interesting because of having to dig deeper into that. But there's also some characters that are spread a little thin. But it's got a great look. It's got a lot of good character actors on it. It has James Remar. It has Robert Patrick. The guy playing Seth Gecko does a great George Clooney impression. I mean, nobody can beat George Clooney in From Dusk Till Dawn. To me, that's still his best role. But the guy's pretty close. And the fact that it's filmed in Austin, and if you are an Austinite, you will see so many familiar places in this show. So, kudos to Robert Rodriguez for once again helping out.
Cool.
Yeah, helping out the local economy. And I have to say, as much as I liked the past two, I like the two Machete movies, this is probably the best thing Robert Rodriguez has done in years. Like, this is the last episode, you could kind of tell they still hadn't fully adjusted to doing a TV-style ending. The ending's a little filmic for something that's supposed to be leading into a second season of TV, but it's still completely worth your while. All 10 episodes are on Netflix. And again, 1,000 times better than Hemlock. Before you get into 2 seasons of Hemlock Grove, if you want to watch a vampire show, this is 1,000 times better than Hemlock Grove, which I previously endorsed even as a guilty pleasure. This is 1,000 times better than that. And it's just good fun. I've been describing it on Netflix as a Texas fried version of Supernatural, and I think that if you're a fan of Supernatural, you will probably like this show.
Wow. All right. Well, very good. That's all right. Yet another thing to put on the queue. Julia, did you have anything you wanted to endorse this week?
Well, I have a 12-year-old who is a Whovian, a Doctor Who addict. She has everything that Doctor Who themed, and she just has watched every single episode. She has them memorized. She knows them in exact order. Like, if you tell her which episode you're on, she'll tell you which one that comes next.
I'm so jealous. It was so not cool to like Doctor Who when I was growing up. Like,
I know. Isn't it weird?
Why would you watch that crap? Are you? It's on the public. It's on public access. What are you trying to learn?
It was
I'm so jealous, actually.
Well,
I have a friend who's such a big Whovian, and we got him a Doctor Who shirt as a birthday present. He's like, well, I can't wear this in public. No woman will ever talk to me. And I was like, no, you don't understand. If you wear that in public now, women will talk to you.
Yeah. Everything's different. When I was a kid, the only way to watch Doctor Who was through, VHS tapes that people, traded around.
It was on PBS when I grew up, but
Right. So somebody would have, recorded a couple of them when the PBS ran a bunch of them during a pledge drive.
Well, we even commissioned a bleach shirt, the shirts that you make with by bleaching bleaching out over a stencil from my friend Jennifer, who, let me see if I can find it. Her website is Jenspirations, JENN .com, I think.
And she's in Austin.
Anyway, she did. Yeah, she's in Austin. So she made this awesome shirt for Sophia that's got the TARDIS on it. So now it's on her website there. You can check it out. She's got an Etsy website. But anyway, so what I was going to say, though, is although I do also endorse Jennifer, I was going to endorse the new season of Doctor Who that has just started up with the new Doctor. And we watched the episode this last week, and it was great. But so I've gone back and started watching it just so I have something to talk to my child about. So I've started watching pretty much all the episodes. And there's a lot to watch.
Can I ask a really ridiculous fanboy question?
Mhm.
What's her favorite monster?
What's my favorite monster?
What's yours and what's your daughter's favorite?
What's her favorite monster? I don't know. I'm trying to think.
The Weeping Angel. There's no way.
Oh yeah, the Weeping Angels. The Weeping Angels.
The Weeping Angels are pretty
terrifying.
Cool.
They're terrifying. Yeah, that would have to be it. Yeah, for both of us.
What about yours? Or is that all around?
I agree. Weeping Angels all the way.
I'm a dyed-in-wool Dalek man. There's nothing cool as
the Daleks are funny. Oh my gosh, I watched an episode that's called Doomsday, and the first one I think it's called. It's two-parter. The second part is Doomsday. The first part is something about the ghosts. What is that?
The one where the Daleks fight the Cybermen. Yeah.
The Daleks fight the Cybermen. Oh my gosh, that was hilarious.
That's my favorite season finale of the new.
It was so funny because they're insulting each other. It's hilarious. At one point, the Cyberman says to the Dalek, We are similar species, but we are more elegant than you, and the Daleks do not care about elegance, and the Cyberman says, that is obvious. That's funny.
That's good.
Anyway, it's a great show.
That's fantastic. Yes. By the way, I thought that Peter Capaldi was really great. The new Doctor, it is so brave and even foolhardy, to my mind, for them for the makers of that show to replace 30-year-old Matt Smith, who's leaving, with 50-something, if that, Peter Capaldi. It was a gray man. He's an older man. It's like going back to Doctor. It's like old school Doctor, and great. I got no problem with that as a fan, but as just a commercial thinker, that just seems just extraordinarily risky.
Let's be a little fair. Peter Capaldi is a lot better looking than William Hartnell.
No, absolutely. He's more on the lines of, because John Pertwee had a certain matinee idol aspect to him. He had that lantern. He had a lantern jaw. He had all that stuff. But the point is, though, that's risky. This is really because we know that a lot of girls really dug the last two Doctors. So who knows? Who knows why they did it this way? But I'm fascinated by the choice. Okay, my own endorsement is randomly. I read Jamaica Inn, which is almost a horror book. It's a novel by Daphne du Maurier, who wrote Rebecca, which is one of my favorite novels. So Jamaica Inn is a Gothic novel about this woman who goes to stay in this dilapidated old hotel that is run by her evil uncle, who is a wrecker, which means that he runs a gang on the cliffs of Cornwall, and they use false lights and muffled bells and things to lure ships to their doom on the rocks, and they murder the people on the rocks and steal all the goods. And it's, to some extent, it's a crime novel, and it's a mystery, and it's a romance. I mean, it's just fantastic. So it was made into a movie by Alfred Hitchcock, which is apparently really terrible, and Hitchcock himself didn't like it. And it also is a brand new BBC miniseries this spring. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So you can't go wrong with Jamaica Inn if you're looking for something to read.
Oh, I did remember my endorsement, and it just showed up on Netflix, a movie called Blue Ruin, which is a revenge film. It gets pretty dark, and it was super hyped at Fantastic Fest, and I was kind of like, can it be really that good? Like, everybody's just going ape over it. Is it an indie darling, or is it actually truly good? And I dug it a lot. I like I said, I don't know if it's a movie I watch a lot because, man, it gets pretty dark, but it's really good. Like, the acting
when you say dark,
is great.
You mean like Takashi Miike dark, or do you mean like...
Oh, no, not like that, but just, it's a solid revenge film that doesn't really pull any punches, but it's really well done. It's great to see an indie film that, like, really delivers, great acting, it flows well. I really like it. It's one that, believe the hype if you hear about Blue Ruin. It's actually a really good movie, and it just showed up on Netflix. Almost a year since I've seen it, I guess. But definitely add it to your list. It's some truly stellar performances, and in the tradition of I don't know. I guess some people will probably disagree, but I think in the tradition of Rolling Thunder and those kind of revenge films.
Well, what's the one where Terrence Stamp goes after the mobsters that killed his daughter, the Limey? That's excellent revenge picture, very recent.
But yeah, add Blue Ruin to your list. I don't think movies are subjective, of course, as we know since we review them. But I think it's a really, really solid movie and deserves to be seen.
Very cool. All right, and that's definitely enough time spent discussing The Exorcist. Although, like I say, we could probably pick, topics that we haven't touched on and do whole sessions on them. But next week we'll be back with some truly absurd stuff in Exorcist too. I can't wait to discuss this. cannot wait because it gives us another chance to discuss.
This is how you know that I love doing this show, because I hate The Exorcist too, which should be good.
Outstanding. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's been delightful doing the 100th episode with you, and I can't believe we made it to 100 episodes. If you're listening to us, join us on Facebook, ask us questions, challenge us, tell us what you think we got right and got wrong. Leave reviews on iTunes. That actually helps people find the show. And, anywhere else you want to contact us is great. But the Facebook page, we're always around there. So thanks, everybody. Have a fantastic evening.
Happy 100.
Yeah.
Happy 100.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for sure.
Bye.
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 Bye.